Osiris.
So before we get to the big discussion of the week, we wanted to recommend a couple of podcasts that have come out on Osiris Media here in the last 2 weeks, I want to say, just since the last time that we recorded. Dave, what do you got?
Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to talk about is a podcast I've talked about in the past, a podcast that Brian and myself are both heavily involved with. It's Undermine, which had its season finale, came out the week of Thanksgiving, so I guess it will have been a little over 2 weeks at this point. There were 10 episodes in season 2. This is episode number 10. And in terms of kind of discussing where the Phish fan base is in 2021, in terms of discussing how people dealt with Phish during the pandemic and how Phish came back in 2021, it just offers up a really good synopsis of where we are now as a fan base and utilize the talents of the Undermine staff. Unlike season 1 of Undermine, where you could kind of hear from us every week, in season 2 we basically took a more behind-the-scenes approach. But this time, the staff, the producers, myself, Brian, Matt Dwyer, Jonathan Hart, RJB, Don Jenkins, all of us kind of discussed how we were feeling about Phish in 2020 and 2021. And I just think it really came out phenomenal, which is a big kudos to Brian, you, for kind of piecing the whole thing together, getting the script, you and, of course, Benji Eisen with the script writing. I think anybody who enjoys this podcast will absolutely enjoy the season finale of Undermine. Even my wife enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it came together well. Huge hat tip to RJB for initially conceiving of the idea of the season and the structure and kind of the idea around this Phish show experience and how do we end this, we end this with where we're at in the present. And I think it did a really nice job of kind of painting a, at times broad but also detailed picture of who the Phish community is, where we're at, and these last 2 years. If we think back to 2 years ago, right now, Phish was on this tiny little mini tour end of 2019. 2019 was kind of an up and down year for a lot of Phish fans. We had a good MSG run looming, strong Mexico run looming in early 2020, but none of us knew that everything in our entire lives would be changed. Feels like overnight, the second that they canceled the Utah Jazz Oklahoma City Thunder basketball game in March of 2020. Everything changed, and suddenly, we were at a point where we could have not heard from Phish for a year and a half, 2 years. There are certain bands that still have not played shows since before COVID. The band was up front, in our faces with Dinner and a Movie, Sigma Oasis, the Beacon Jams, and then played this incredible tour through the late summer and fall of 2021. And it was a great way to cap off what they mean to us. So really enjoyed that. And also, just from a production standpoint, I'm very happy it's over. I'm going to talk about a little mini series that we did through this feed this week. I got together with RJB, Jonathan Hart, and Matt Dwyer following the Get Back documentary that streamed on Disney Plus over Thanksgiving weekend. 8 hours covering the Beatles' Get Back sessions, the Let It Be sessions in January of 1969. Peter Jackson meticulously took 150 hours or so of documentary footage, audio footage, and tied it together in this, what has to be called a very as neat and tight of a package as possible to tell this full story of what it was like to be in Twickenham Studios as well as in Apple Studios as the band reconvened 2 months after putting out the White Album, trying to figure out what their next step was. They wanted to do some sort of a live show. They wanted to make some sort of a record that featured a more live, raw sound. Didn't exactly know what direction they were going in. We're trying to write songs together for the first time since, I don't really know, maybe Revolver, it would seem as though, but there was a lot of like independent songwriting happening, but there was definitely collaboration. I guess you could probably say Sgt. Pepper's. That was a Paul driven project, but really Sgt. Pepper's was built in a studio. So they were trying to do that, but in a much more kind of raw fashion, looking back on their time in Hamburg, looking back on their time in the Cavern Club. And you just watch this band figure each other out. And you know this band is going to break up about a year and a half from now formally, and they will never play together again. And this is kind of the last gasp of this band figuring out who they are. Can we write songs together? Is the Beatles thing too much? And it's not hyperbole to say it's the greatest music documentary I've ever seen. And we talked about it across 3 episodes, just kind of breaking down themes. So check that out. You can find that here in the drop feed. It was a Get Back deep dive.
Osiris.